Motherland. Life and death, dream and awakening, are stations for the confused soul that it travels through, stage after stage, receiving signs and winks from things, floundering in the sea of darkness, stubbornly clinging to a hope that is renewed with a smile in obscurity. What are you looking for, traveler? What emotions are running through your chest? How do your instincts and whims decay? Why are you giggling like knights? Why do you shed tears like children? You witness the joys of the dancing holidays, you see the sword of the executioner striking necks, and every beautiful or ugly act begins in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Your conscience is dominated by shadows as skillful as a magician, such as the mother, the teacher, the lover, and the usher. Shadows that do not withstand the winds of time, but their names remain crowned with eternity. No matter what the place tells me, it will continue to drip familiarity, create unforgettable memories, and engrave its impact in the heart in the name of the homeland. I will adore as long as I live the scents of the apothecaries, the minarets and the domes, the bright face illuminating the alleys, the mules of judgment and the feet of the barefoot, the chants of the possessed and the tunes of the harps, the dancing horses, and the trees. Ivy, the wailing of doves, and the cooing of doves, and my mother speaks to me and says, "The day you were born." She shakes her beautifully formed head, and I say with joy, "Indeed, this is your original day." My father, Muhammad al-Anabi, was a wealthy grain merchant. He fathered 7 distinguished merchants and he lived to be over 80 years of age, enjoying good health. At 80, he saw my beautiful mother, Fatuma al-Azai, who was 17 years old. The last bunch of a butcher called al-Azai, a bunch of pickles, won his heart, and he married her and lived with her in a spacious house. He bought it in her name, causing anger and unrest in his family. My brothers considered marriage a dirty, illegal game, and they sought help from their father through the intercession of the judge and the chief merchant, but he escaped from their grasp like a lost lover. He accepted marriage as a right that could not be discussed, and the age difference was an illusion used by those who were ill-advised, and he began to drink from the source of his happiness with a heart full of confidence. And your birth came confirming defeat and renewing anger. I often say to her, there is no limit to human greed. Since my childhood, I have been receiving the most beautiful words despite encountering the ugliest actions. My father called me Kandil, but my brothers called me Ibn Fatuma, to disavow my kinship and cast doubt on it. My father died before imprinting his image on my consciousness, leaving us a fortune to ensure a comfortable life until the end of our lives. You ended the dispute between us and my brothers. My mother feared for herself and for me. So she was surrounded by obsessions and suspicions until she decided not to send me to the book, so she entrusted me to Sheikh Magaha al-Jubaili, who was a neighbor of her family, so that he would teach me knowledge at home. From him, I received lessons in the Quran, Hadith, language, arithmetic, literature, jurisprudence, Sufism, and travel. He was 40 years old, strong and majestic, with a graceful beard and a high turban, an elegant robe, and bright, piercing eyes. He extended his full voice when delivering a lesson, and he delivered it slowly and quietly, and he overcame the difficult with his quality of explanation and gentle smile. My mother was following the lessons with interest, taking advantage of her long free time, listening from behind a curtain while we were in the hall in the winter, and from behind a locker room while we were in Sala Malek during the rest of the seasons. She used to say to me, "I see you are happy with your teacher, and this is good luck." I told her enthusiastically, "He is a great sheikh." He would set aside time for discussion, asking any questions he saw, but inviting me to express my thoughts, and treating me like an adult. One day, I don't remember at what time, I asked him, "If Islam is as you say, why are the streets crowded with the poor and ignorant?" He answered me sadly, "Islam today is present in the mosques and does not extend beyond them to the outside." He talks excessively and inflames the situation with his fire. Even the governor is not safe from his evil. And I said to him, "So Satan is the one who dominates us, not revelation." He said with satisfaction, "I congratulate you on your statement, he is older than your age." "And work, our sheikh?" He said quietly, "You are smart, and everything that comes is close." As for his talk about trips, it is a source of passion and joy. In the course of his conversation, he revealed an ancient traveler. He said, "I learned about journeys in the company of my late father, so we traveled around the east and the west. So I say eagerly, tell me about your observations, our master. He spoke to me generously until I experienced in my imagination the vast Muslim lands, and my homeland appeared to me as a star in a sky full of stars. He said, but what is truly new will not be found in the lands of Islam. My eyes wonder why, and he says, they are all similar in conditions, attitudes, and rituals, and they are all far from the true spirit of Islam, but you discover new and strange homes in the southern desert. He stirred up my longings to the point of burning, and then he said, I made that trip alone after my father's death, and I visited the lands of the east, Al-Hira, and the arena. Were it not for the stubborn circumstances, I would have visited Al-Aman, the sunset, and the mountain, but the caravan stopped at the arena because a civil war broke out in Dar al-Aman. He gave me a strange look and then said, this is a pagan land. I shouted, I seek refuge in God. But the stranger finds nothing in it or on the way to it except security due to its urgent need for trade and tourism. I shouted again, but she is cursed. He said calmly, there is no embarrassment for the viewer. Why didn't you repeat it? Life and family circumstances made me forget the most important goal of the trip, which is to visit Dar al-Jabal. So I asked him eagerly, what is the danger of Dar al-Jabal? He said with a sigh, you hear a lot about it, as if it is the miracle of the country, as if it is the perfection after which there is no perfection. There is no doubt that many travelers have written about it. He said in a tone that was not devoid of sorrow, I have never encountered a human being in my life who visited it, nor did I find a book or manuscript about it. I said annoyed, this is a strange and unbelievable thing. He said gloomily, it is a closed secret. Like any closed secret, it pulled me to its edge, immersed me in its darkness, and set fire to my imagination. Whenever a word or action offended me, my soul fluttered around the abode of the mountain, and Sheikh Magaha al-Jubayli began to enlighten my mind and soul, dissipate the darkness around me, and direct my longings to the noblest things in life. My mother was happy with what I was gaining day after day, and she participated in shaping me with her love and beauty. She was of medium height, graceful, and her skin exuded whiteness, serenity, and saltiness. She did not hesitate once to declare her admiration for my beauty, but she told me with the same frankness, your words often upset Safawi. I asked why and she said, it is as if you only see the ugly side of life. She did not deny my statements or see them as exaggeration, but she expressed her belief, saying, God is the maker of all things, and he has wisdom in all things. I said impulsively, I am upset by injustice, poverty, and ignorance. She said with determination, God demands our satisfaction in all circumstances. I raised the issue for discussion with the sheikh, but his position was completely clear. He believes in reason and freedom of choice, but he gently whispered in my ear, avoid disturbing your mother. It is advice that I tended to follow, motivated and supported by my great love for it, and I did not find it difficult. Her naivety was equal to her beauty itself, but the days that gave me lessons and education also pushed me to the verge of youth. The sky fell with new rain, and its scenes were revealed in the light of new torches. Sheikh Magaha al-Jubayli asked me, what did you intend to do in this life that is not complete without work? But I used to see Halima Adli Tantowi with new eyes, as long as I saw her as a child, guiding her blind father to recite the Quran. They have an old house in our neighborhood, where our house stands, shining like the star. My interest extended beyond her to her father, with his thin stature, squinted eyes, and thick, wrinkled nose. He aroused my sympathy and amazement, and I liked his voice as he voluntarily called to prayer in front of his door, and the breathless days turned me toward the girl and I discovered her again. The land of the neighborhood was slippery due to a light rain, and the sheikh was walking cautiously, handing his left hand and his right hand to his daughter on his thick stick. She felt the places of his feet for him with successive strokes, like the beak of a hen searching for grain. Halima walked with him, immersed in a loose, dark-colored robe, with only two eyes visible from her drawn veil, but to my eyes, which were soaked in the water of fatwa, her appearance represented a perfect female, whose hidden jewels were embodied whenever the breeze blew through her robes, as if they were embers under ashes. Her foot slipped, or nearly slipped, and she quickly tightened her muscles to maintain her balance, and her head made a violent movement that knocked the end of the veil off her face. It was completely imprinted on my sight, planting its beauty in the corners of my conscience. In a fleeting moment, I received a long message filled with all the symbols that decide the fate of a heart, and my mother asked me, based on what I heard from Sheikh Magaha's talk about work that completes life, don't you agree with me that nothing is good for you except trade? I surprised her when I said, I am thinking about marriage first. She warmly welcomed the postponed talk about work, and began describing to me some of the merchant's daughters, but I surprised her again when I said, my choice fell on Halima, the daughter of Sheikh Adli Tantawi. My mother received a shock that she could not control, and she said, it is below what is required in everything. I said with determination, but I want it. She said with dissatisfaction with a frown on her face, your brothers will gloat over us. But my brothers were as if nothing had happened. My feeling that I was the man of the house was growing with time. She did not oppose me even if she insisted on me agreeing, and at the same time she did not lose hope. And so things go according to my desires, albeit at a high price. My mother's opposition began to diminish until she said to me in peace, your happiness is more precious to me than anything or consideration. Immediately, she did what was expected of her, so I went from the palace to the dilapidated house and Halima proposed to me. The next time, she accompanied me with her, and we sat with Sheikh Adli al-Tantawi and his wife, and the bride entered and showed what the Sharia allows to show from her face and hands. She stayed for a few minutes and then left. Preparing for the marriage went on with a commendable speed, and one day I noticed that my teacher, Sheikh Magaha al-Jubaili, was suffering from unusual confusion and that he was speaking to me in a completely new tone. He said quietly while looking at his vehicle, there is an important matter, Kandil. This aroused my interest to the utmost degree, so I said, at your disposal, my lord. He said sadly, I can no longer stand my loneliness. The sheikh was a widower, and he had 3 daughters who married and settled in their homes. I asked him innocently, why are you alone? Didn't the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, get married after the death of Lady Khadija? You're right, and this is what I'm thinking. I said enthusiastically, you are a man who is welcomed by noble families. He said shyly, but my request is specifically for your family. I was astonished and faced with complete annoyance. I wondered, my family? He replied humbly, yes, I am not your mother. I said hastily, but my mother does not get married. Why, Kandil? I was a little confused and then said, it's my mother. He said calmly, marriage is the law of God Almighty, and it will not be easy for you to get married and leave your mother alone. He was silent for a while, then said, may God guide us to the straight path. In my loneliness, my thoughts collided, and the events in my imagination were arranged in a new, depressing picture. I said to myself, my mother's sudden acquiescence to my desire to marry Halima was nothing but a result of her desire to marry Sheikh Magaha al-Jubaili. Innocent things happened behind my back, but they stuck to my throat. I found myself in a delicate and awkward situation between the 2 most dear people in my life and my anger, discontent, and my life. I chanted from my depths, O God, spare me injustice and foolishness. The truth is that I adopted a behavior that was more worthy of a person older than me and with experience. I let things happen as God wanted, and I convinced my rebellious self that marriage is a right for men and women, and that my mother is not a pure mother but she is also a woman, and that we were created to suffer the truth, to withstand it, and to receive our share of pleasure and pain. With the courage of believers, I carried the experience in all its dimensions upon myself, and I approached my mother about the matter with my usual frankness. She expressed astonishment that made me angry and muttered, that had never occurred to me. I said coldly, but it is right and just. I continued to digest my disappointment when she said stammeringly, I want a chance to think. I considered that the first sign of approval because it was in stark contrast to the clear style of rejection, and I waited with a sad heart, until she whispered to me in shame and confusion, God's will be done. I contemplated how we decorate our desires with luminous words of piety, and how we conceal our modesty with the veils of divine revelation. The usual preparations were made for the marriage of son and mother, and it was agreed that my mother would move to Sheikh Magaha's house, which was a beautiful house, and Halima would move to the palace. I was determined to seek refuge in the available happiness, shaking off the residue of desolation, but fate befell us and ruined our plan. Our quiet life was disturbed by the 3rd chamberlain of the governor, who stormed us like a storm. One day he saw Halima and decided to make her his fourth wife. Sheikh Adli Tantawi was terrified and said to my teacher Sheikh Magaha, "I cannot accept rejection." He broke off the engagement while trembling, and Halima was married to the third party between one day and one night. I turned to myself in amazement, wondering about Halima's heart, about her hidden feelings. Did she share my pain with me, or did Allah al-Malik intoxicate her and dazzle her eyes? And I found myself in my loneliness saying to myself, religion betrayed me, my mother betrayed me, Halima betrayed me, may God's curse be upon this false home. Everything seemed bleak, starting from the simplest individuals such as Sheikh Adli Tantawi to the governor himself, passing through people and transactions that deserved to be flooded to be replaced by a new, clean world. I was not affected by my mother's compassion and sadness, nor by the wisdom Sheikh Magaha heaped on me. The world seemed to me yellow and unpleasant, unbearable and unacceptable. My mother told me, "You should get married as soon as possible, and perhaps God will provide for you better than what you chose." I shook my head in refusal, and Sheikh Magaha said, "Get to work without delay." So I shook my head as well. The man said, "You undoubtedly have a plan?" Expressing my pandemic emotions, I said, "To take a trip." My mother asked in annoyance, "What trip? You are barely 20 years old." I said, "This is the most appropriate age for the trip." I looked at my teacher carefully and said, "I will visit the East, Ohira, and the arena, but I will not stop as I stopped because of the civil war that broke out in Al-Aman. I will visit Al-Aman, the sunset, and Dar al-Jabal. What time do I need for that?" Sheikh Magaha al-Jubaili said as he looked at my mother with pity, "You will need at least a year, if not more." I said with determination, "This is not too much for the seeker of wisdom. I want to know and to return to my sick homeland with the healing medicine." My mother was about to speak, but I preceded her, saying firmly, "It is an irreversible decision." The dream took possession of me, reality faded, and the abode of the mountain appeared to the eye of my imagination like a beloved star ascending to its throne behind the stars, and the eternal desire for the journey matured in the flame of perpetual pain. Sheikh Magaha al-Jubaili submitted to the reality, so he invited the caravan owner to have dinner with us. He was 40 years old, called Ulkani bin Hamdis, of strong constitution and opinion. Sheikh Magaha said, "I would like him to go with you and come back with you." The man said, "This depends on his desire. We stay in each house for 10 days, and whoever is satisfied with it stays with us, and whoever wants more stays behind. In any case, there is a convoy every 10 days. Sheikh Magaha said to me, 10 days are sufficient. I said, "I think so." My mother focused on the issue of security, and the man told her clearly, a convoy has never been attacked. The people of the country do not receive a tenth of the protection that a stranger receives. I began to prepare for the trip, guided by my teacher Sheikh Magaha. I filled a bag with dinars, a second with clothes, and a third with supplies, including notebooks, pens, and books. I decided that my mother's marriage to the Sheikh would take place before my departure. However, the Sheikh moved to the palace so that I would not be abandoned without a resident, and she dressed me in a new condition, so I thought less. In my sorrows, the journey dominated my senses, and an unlimited field of hope opened before me.